Right, this week Michael's been saying things again. Let's hear those things and see if we agree with those things or otherwise. Spoiler, it's going to be otherwise. Floor's yours, Michael.
Hey, it's Mike here, and today I'm responding to this carnivore dieter's 6-month blood work results, which she is very proud of, it seems. And we're going to have to examine these results, which are, in many cases, shockingly high.
Shocking and high are both value judgment statements, Michael. Neither is scientific, neither is a measurement, neither is of any evidentiary purpose. They're both emotively driven words meant for propaganda purpose. Science is litigated empirically, with datasets collected using the scientific methodology, i.e. experimental work under control and observation, etc. Do you have any of that? Spoiler, I can shorten this video down a long way for people that can't be bothered with watching the whole thing. Here it is. There is no evidence to support Michael's claims in these videos surrounding cholesterol and atherosclerosis heart disease. Not one single data point anywhere.
I've been doing the carnivore diet since December of 2022. Between months 6 and 7, I got some extensive blood work done. So today I'm going to share those results with you along with some interpretations. So all in all, I am happy with these numbers.
But she has, 10 minutes of preamble about cholesterol, for example. So yeah, the cholesterol denial is going to run deep in this video.
Cholesterol denial is a propaganda term meant to manipulate the psychology and thought processes of the frankly feeble-minded, Michael. It's not going to work on anybody with any intelligence whatsoever. All you need is an IQ above about 80. Nobody's denying cholesterol. It's a molecule we're all aware of. It exists. We know it's there. What we're saying to you, Michael, is that you don't have any evidence for your claims that it's causally involved in a disease process.
Video, and we're talking about 39-year-old Jenny Mittich, who's a YouTuber, who says after her husband asked if she wanted to go on the carnivore diet, she did her own research, literally said that, and then decided to go on the diet. But in my opinion, frankly, she has been brainwashed by low-carb docs and low-carb influencers into believing things that aren't necessarily scientifically accurate. So,
oh, is that right? Mike the Vegan, claimed in your very moniker, Mike the Vegan. A member of the Church of Anorexia Vegana who could only possibly hold the beliefs that he holds if he had been thoroughly and successfully indoctrinated by that cult. Because there's no scientific justification, neither is there one to be found in basic common sense for the vegan ideology. Let's see what sort of evidence you've got for your claims, though, because it's still none.
Well, she's probably just trying to be healthier. Of course, she's going out there and reiterating claims like this.
Now, total cholesterol is a completely arbitrary number. It does not matter. When it's seen by itself, there's really no point to it.
And she talks about LDL particle size a bunch, so we'll do a deep dive into that. We're also going to hit on some carnivore heart disease cases because, anecdotes are apparently what people respond to nowadays anyway.
Anecdotes.
First, I want to talk about the evidence for why this woman is just sort of in a low-carb vacuum chamber in terms of where she's getting her information. Here she is.
All right, so you're not in a vacuum chamber, an echo chamber in your vegan ideology, the Church of Anorexia Vegana, Michael, are you not?
I did a bunch of research on blood work, specifically pertaining to blood work while on a high-fat, low-carb diet. And
Research or review of other people's research? As a former scientific researcher, as someone involved in producing the literature myself, I prefer to call research the actual undertaking of experimental works. I'm not sure if this person has done that or hasn't done that. I don't know who she is or what her background is at all. I've never actually heard of her before. Sorry about that.
I found a bunch of excellent resources. I've linked them all below.
She cites some scientific papers, one, for example, on why cholesterol levels don't matter for people on a low-carb diet. But looking to it, we're talking about an opinion piece.
Yeah, right. So opinion pieces are no good, Michael, okay? I agree. Opinion pieces are no good. To talk about cause and effect, what we need is experimental, properly controlled, properly disciplined experimental works undertaken in a laboratory lock-in situation. Do you have any of those, Michael? No? Still? Okay.
The lowest on the hierarchy of scientific evidence.
Oh, the hierarchy of scientific evidence. In fact, there are about 6 different versions of this thing that I've seen in the last 12 months, put forward by various commentators and in various places in the literature and online, etc. So there's not the hierarchy. There are different versions put together by different factions of people with different barrows to push in terms of who's more important than who in the scientific fraternity and who's doing what. Basically, it's charlatans and anti-scientific crackpots not doing any science at all who are trying to claim that they are more important than the people actually collecting the data in laboratories doing the actual scientific work. It's not going to fly with this scientist. The thing debunks itself because in and of itself is an opinion. This is not the basis of some kind of empirical measurement of anything. This is an opinion, and as such, it falls on the bottom of itself. It debunks itself of value. Right, what's next?
The reasoning of their cholesterol numbers are so high that a doctor might tell them to stop their diet.
What a doctor usually tells a patient is what the medical council mandates that doctor to say to that patient, or words to that effect. Doctors have very little choice, actually. They must toe the line for fear of being struck off and losing their very profession. So who cares what doctors would say, and especially about a topic like nutrition, because doctors are not trained in nutrition. There are some doctors commenting online publicly about nutrition and getting it right, and I'm happy for those guys to continue to comment about nutrition, personally. There are also some doctors running around who are getting it badly, horrifically wrong, in fact, and I'm not happy with what those people are doing, so being a doctor's got nothing to do with it, actually. What's next?
Lol. Clearly connected to the low-carb community. I mean, at the end, it gives a shout-out to Thomas DeLauer, who's like a low-carb, high-meat diet pusher.
So what?
Interviews carnivore dieters, and even
so what?
Interviewed the CEO of ButcherBox.
So what?
Oh, he's ButcherBox.
We low-carb people have slightly different blood work than the general population, and that can be concerning for some physicians, but we are going to talk about all of that today.
I think the words she was looking for were most physicians.
And the word I'm looking for and finding immediately is so what? A physician's opinion on this topic is of no interest to me. Someone who actually understands the science of this field very well.
And this, again, brings me back to that whole idea with Dr. Sean Baker, where I joked that he was, transforming into a lizard man, or he was a lizard man or something, because in order to believe that all of these results that we're going to get into are healthy, you essentially have to believe that you're a different species. She touched.
There is absolutely nothing whatsoever that you've provided here in this video or anywhere else, Michael, that supports that last claim in any way, shape or form. It is purely your opinion, and its value is therefore zero.
Is on some basics of cholesterol, like giving a science lesson, and one of the major red flags is that she relies largely on low carb infographics.
Okay, Mike, the vegan.
From all of the low carb doctors that I could find, they couldn't care less about your LDL cholesterol as long as your other numbers are good.
Which is also not strictly correct. There's more nuance to it than that. I think that people should probably binge watch my Fine channel on this topic. I have a whole playlist on it.
Low carb doctors, eek. I should probably remind you once again, my daily video reminder, that multiple meta-analyses show that low carb diets are associated with about a 30% increased risk of all-cause mortality.
Okay, number one, these are associative studies. They cannot inform on cause and effect. Risk is a cause and effect statement. So your statement, therefore, Mike, falls flat on its face. Secondly, a 30% increase upon what, Michael? What was the baseline incidence of mortality in the populations in these studies concerned? Well, I'll give it to you, since you probably don't even know. Roughly 8 cases of mortality per 10,000 person-years of follow-up at baseline. And that's in an aged population, relatively, at the outset. Okay, so as such, a study not applicable to those of a younger age in any case. But anyway, 8 in 10,000, what's 30% more than that? It's a small number of incidences of mortality per 100,000 person-years of follow-up. Its meaning is nothing really, its value is nothing really. It's statistically significant purely because of a large sample size, but that doesn't mean that the finding is of utility or value. Even if it was a cause and effect relationship, which it is not. It's an associative relationship which cannot inform on cause and effect, not one jot. So the response, Michael, to your associative studies is, yes, so what?
Again, why Dr. Mercola quit his keto diet recently.
Well, who knows why Dr. Mercola does anything that Dr. Mercola does. He held an opinion for a long time, and now he's publicly holding a different opinion and apparently changing his behaviour. His ideas and behaviour hitherto were correct, and currently he's in error. But so what? He's one individual, he's one man.
It was that study in middle-aged people with low-carb diets increasing mortality risk.
No, these studies do not inform on risk. I've covered that.
And the main difference between her carnivore diet and other low-carb, high-meat diets is that she's removed even more of the protective antioxidants.
Yeah, but you can get antioxidant activity from a number of different places, Michael, including from non-nutrition sources. Still waiting, by the way, for any evidence whatsoever that cholesterol or lipoproteins or any subfraction of the lipoproteins is causally involved in heart disease, for which we will need an empirical data set collected on a set of genetically identical twins separated at birth, controlled in every aspect of their life down to the nth degree, except for their exposure to cholesterol or lipoproteins or any fraction of the lipoproteins. We'll be waiting a long time because no such study exists, Michael, still, and you are pushing a theology, not science.
Anyway, before we go deeply into the myths and stuff that she talks about, let's just hit on her cholesterol numbers, which she waited later into the video to show. But she starts out with sort of her before eating a different diet, which she didn't really elucidate that much.
This is from May 2022. I was 210 pounds at this point, and I had been on the Noom diet for 3 months. And you can see from my numbers that everything looks good. A conventional doctor would look at these numbers and say, all right, that's good.
So her cholesterol was starting out okay. It was under 200, closer to 150 is better.
Hang on, Michael. What qualifies you to comment on anybody's cholesterol levels in any way, shape or form? What qualifications do you hold that would grant you credence that you should comment publicly on this? Should we wait for that? Mike, to my understanding, holds a master's degree in public health, which is a study of incidence of disease, basically. It's epidemiology. It's not science. Michael doesn't even know what science is, clearly. So why would we listen to a completely unqualified individual profess to us about cholesterol? Why would we do that? Why would anybody with any intelligence do that?
However, her LDL even then was not optimal because it was...
Again, says who, Michael?
Over 100. But then we get to her multiple carnivore diet readings, and this is where stuff gets pretty wild and freaky, yes.
Wild and freaky, yes, both also very scientific terms, Michael. Well done.
It has an upward trajectory every time.
Okay, well, that's a description, but once again, lacks any empirical foundation. What are the numbers, Michael?
She gets it until it gets to 262, which is...
Okay, so total cholesterol of 262, there's nothing stunning or surprising or concerning about that. It's actually quite normal, especially in people who eat a carnivore diet. The people who eat a carnivore diet do tend to have higher total cholesterol and higher LDL. Yep.
Over 2 times, like 2.5 times my level.
Yeah, but Michael, why would you put your level forward as a comparator of goodness? You're looking well, by the way, son. Okay, so yours is lower than hers. Well, so what, Michael? Somebody else, again, will have a different value again. That's the thing about the individual variability. It's all over the place.
She responds with that gem here.
Now, total cholesterol is a completely arbitrary number. It does not matter. When it's seen by itself, there's really no point to it.
And you can see that she's just reiterating low-carb points, kind of.
Oh, right, Mike the vegan. Because you don't do that at all, do you, Mike? Reiterating the same nonsensical, ridiculous garbage I've already called you out on time and time again in my videos and shown the absolute flaws and foibles in your ridiculous pseudoscientific crackpottery, and yet it's like water off a duck's back, and the next week you're back saying the same stupid thing again, pretending you haven't even seen my video.
Of like she's been brainwashed. I mean, it's
like...
brainwashed
Mike the vegan. If you say so.
Like somebody sitting in a burning house going, temperature levels don't actually matter.
No, it's not like that at all. You saying it's like that doesn't mean that it is. That's an inept analogy. It's rubbish, Michael.
She makes a claim which is just one of the most outright inaccurate claims in the video about...
Oh, this will be good.
The American Heart Association just also not caring about total cholesterol.
Caring? The American Heart Association will take a position statement. But their position statement is an opinion, Michael. Remember where those go?
American Heart Association removed total cholesterol from things that they're concerned about. And so I'm just going to not worry about this number.
But she's conflating that with dietary cholesterol. And even then, what she's citing is not accurate. She's citing an editorialized version of the 2015 Egg Board attempt to get cholesterol is not a nutrient of concern into the USDA dietary guidelines. It was in there for a second and then taken out. But let's look to this 2021 scientific statement.
No, that's an opinion statement, Michael. The fact that it says a scientific statement doesn't make it one. This is an opinion piece. Remember where those go, Michael?
On diets from the American Heart Association. They say
A bunch of people who've come up with an opinion.
things like, quote, healthy dietary patterns are inherently low in saturated fat.
That's an opinion. See, there are no numbers there, Michael. No evidence provided there whatsoever. That's just words. Somebody's opinion. Bought and paid for.
Trans fat, cholesterol, etc. And quote, a positive relation between dietary cholesterol and LDL cholesterol concentrations has been documented.
That's a meaningless statement. Any value of a regression line can be reported as this is the relationship we observed. Without a statement of the R-squared value around that predictive value, we have no idea of its veracity or utility. Actually, that's why it's not given here. So just words, yep.
Still, the current U.S. intake is similar to the historic 300 milligrams per day upper level.
So what?
They're saying that it was just like not necessary. There's a bunch of weird politics going on with that, but either way.
But not in vegan fields, are there not, Michael? No weird politics going on there at all? No propaganda, no repeating of the same messages, presenting yourself as a scientist when you're not one? None of that's going on, is it, Michael? Okay.
You can see her claim is not accurate. Doubly.
According to who, Michael? You have a master's degree in public health, which has nothing to do with science or physiology or nutrition.
In the interest of time, here are her HDL and her triglyceride numbers. She's happy with those. We're going to go into HDL in a little bit. But what I'm really concerned about, as you know, is that LDL or bad cholesterol.
But there's no such thing as bad cholesterol, Michael, and LDL is not cholesterol, by the way. You clearly don't even understand that. Whoops.
Her LDL was, get this, 173, which is roughly the same as her total cholesterol was before going on a carnivore diet. That is.
So that's what we notice quite often, actually, in people who change to a carnivore diet, is both the total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol both go up. And there's a reason for it that has a utility, actually. It's under the control of the genes reacting to the environment in which they're being placed in such a way as to best support the evil machinations of said person and their want of survival and stuff.
Disturbing, and the fact that she...
Disturbing is one of those words, Michael, isn't it? That has nothing to do with science, veracity, correctness, or the facts at hand.
Doesn't think it's a concern is scary. And yeah, compared...
Scary and concern, both also words that have no place in a scientific discussion about whether or not cholesterol is involved causally in heart disease. It still isn't.
To my last test, eating a vegan diet, she has about 3.5 times as much LDL flowing through her arteries at any given time than I do.
So?
And in order to justify these high levels, she of course has to do...
They don't need to be justified. They are what they are. They are under the control of the genes. The genes know what they're doing. Those genes have survived at least 4,500 million years of positive and negative selection pressures, Michael. No justification is needed.
Some crazy weird lipid panels that can be interpreted 1,000 ways, and she did the advanced lipid panel.
Remember that a lipid particle size test counts the number of particles and then it sorts them by size and density.
Yeah, but none of this is of any utility either. It's interesting, but in fact, it's completely irrelevant because cholesterol and lipoproteins still don't cause heart disease, any of them. So spinning them down still further and subclassifying them still further is of no inherent value or utility. It's just overcomplicating something that doesn't need overcomplicating. The point that Michael is trying to make is he is wanting to, and is indeed in this video directly asserting that there is a cause and effect relationship between LDL, which he's calling cholesterol even though it's not, and heart disease. And he is failing to provide any evidence for his claim. The reason for that is because it does not exist. He's a theologian, not a scientist. He's a spin doctor, he's a propagandist, and he's an incompetent buffoon. But that's for another day.
She says she has that nice, fluffy, large, buoyant, magical LDL that somehow...
No, those are words you said, Michael. She didn't say those words. That's you characterizing what she said in an inappropriate fashion.
Makes you immune to heart disease.
No. Did she say that?
We're going to look at that. She continues.
My LDL particle number is a little high, but that varies greatly.
According to whom?
Higher LDL particle numbers have been seen on a high-fat, low-carb diet. So
yes.
All in all, I am happy with these numbers.
You know what else has been seen on a low-carb diet? Increased all-cause mortality.
Well, not really, Michael. Not to any valuable utilitarian prediction, actually. There are no studies which make such a prediction, and even the ones that do are usually badly compromised by inappropriate and creative adjustment of what was actually observed, in fact, to make it look like something else was observed than what was in fact observed. Very scientific. Not.
Having been seen on a low-carb diet is absolutely not a metric for healthy or lacking risk. Like, how can you...
There is nothing that can give us a metric on risk in terms of nutrition and hard health outcome in human beings any amount of time later. Too many degrees of freedom in between those 2 points. Unless you keep those people locked in labs under control and observation, you don't know what's caused what. That's my whole point here, which you don't seem to be able to grasp.
You look at this page and go, awesome, all looks good here. I mean, high.
Yeah, but these are arbitrary decisions based on arbitrary values. These don't mean anything.
Anyway, let's go into the LDL size claims here, because it really has been a low-carb
Size claims, is it, Michael? I can't wait.
carnivore talking point for years, that this large, buoyant LDL is just like, you just got little teddy bears floating around there in your arm.
Again, that's your characterization. Ridiculous. I know a teddy bear that wouldn't be happy with that characterization at all.
Bollocks!
Arteries. However, we have to look to the research, and one study that I've never seen low carbers even acknowledge is this one, which looked at some cardiovascular risk based on...
No, it didn't, because there are no studies that can inform us on risk. You can't predict disease from lipoproteins in men, women, children, the elderly, or anybody else, in fact. They are not good predictors of outcome, and even if they were, so what? Because something being associated with something else does not make it the cause of it, as adequately covered earlier in this very fine video that I've already done. So you can just rewind and see that again.
Different particles. Yeah, that large, fluffy LDL was similarly associated with heart disease to that small LDL.
So?
And yeah, 63% higher risk for more...
No, not risk, Michael. None of these studies can inform on risk still.
Small particles, and 44% higher for large, slightly...
No, same argument.
Better, but 44% is not hard.
And also look at the value of the errors. Those error bars were quite wide, weren't they, Michael? Ergo, the value of the finding is thus eroded, even as a prediction.
It's like being stabbed by a slightly shorter knife and then concluding that it's healthy to be stabbed.
Another completely inept analogy. No, it's not like that at all, Michael. That's ridiculous. You're looking very well, by the way, if I hadn't mentioned that already.
And total LDL particles were way higher up there. More is the main thing. She talks about that pattern A being good and pattern B being bad. Well, this study looked
it's false.
at that and cardiovascular risk. And here
there's no studies that inform on risk. They just purport to.
Is artery wall thickness, which is, of course, a measure of artery clogging.
OMFG. Wow. The thing that's really grabbed my attention there is the R value. Negative 0.19 on the left. In the middle, negative 0.14. And on the right, negative 0.14. The actual value of that is generally statistically inferred by taking the R value and multiplying it by itself to give us a number somewhere between 0, meaning there is no correlation of any kind, no predictive value here at all between these two variables, or 1.0 where there is a perfect 100% covariance. It's a straight line of data points. So this is closer to the 0.0 end, because if you take 0.19 and round it up for ease of maths to 0.2, and then you multiply that by itself, you get 0.04. And the other two are even smaller than that. Okay, Mike? So this isn't evidence of anything of any utility whatsoever. Let's move on.
And looking at LDL particle size, and yeah, you can see there's just a minute trend line as LDL gets larger, the risk
of no value
goes ever.
Show us the 95% confidence around those lines, and you'll see that actually an increase is possible in the real world.
so slightly down. What are you going to get? Like 0.002 millimeter less artery clogging? But I think it's good for people to not just hear this from a vegan who they probably are like, oh, you just tried to save animals. He's horrible.
Well, you'd be failing if you're trying to save animals, Michael, because a vegan diet is causally associated with orders of magnitude higher numbers of animal deaths than a completely carnivorous diet based on large ruminant muscle meat and associated fat. Those are the facts, which are supportable with actual, both empirical data sets and common sense, Michael. Unlike anything that you've ever said on any topic.
Let's go to Healthline, which tends to have a low-carb slant. They say, quote, well, smaller, more dense LDL particles may pose additional risks.
No, there are no studies that can inform us on risk still.
It's important to note that all LDL particles can lead to arterial plaque.
No, lead to is a cause and effect statement. There are no studies that show that that is so. It's not so, it seems, actually.
Regardless of their size, and present cardiovascular risk.
No, still no on risks. Absolutely not. Unacceptable.
And to go even further, here is a quote from pro-meat low-carb person Chris Kresser, who will even debate vegans here and there, like on Joe Rogan, quote, well, it's true that small, dense, oxidized LDL particles are more likely to cause atherosclerosis.
Oxidized ones can be involved in the process, yes.
Large buoyant particles can also be harmful when their concentration is high enough.
Yeah, but that's the opinion of an acupuncturist.
So yeah, when a group of cardiovascular professionals who dedicate their life to fighting heart disease, like the American Society of Cardiology, when
what he actually means, I think he's correcting himself there on the screen now, he means the European Consensus Panel on Cardiovascular Disease. This is an organisation of people with absolutely no conflict of interest whatsoever. They're not paid anything at all by companies that make statin medications, are they? Right, shall we move on? Because conflict of interest is bad. Michael said so himself many, many times in his videos, and although he's ignored the conflict of interest here on these people and their ideas, their opinions, because they haven't produced any evidence either. I've read these papers very carefully, all of them actually, with the competence that I inherently have as an actual former practicing publishing research scientist myself working in this field, as it turns out. And they haven't provided any evidence for their claims either. This is a bought and paid for opinion. Okay, so what's next, Michael?
And they say that high LDL is causal to atherosclerosis.
Yeah, but that doesn't make it so. How many millions of dollars from the companies we've just seen listed there underpin that opinion? Because you'll notice there are no statistics provided there, no data set to prove the point. It's because it doesn't exist, Michael. This is just an opinion.
No, there's no, unless that LDL be fat, no, it's just LDL is causal to atherosclerosis.
Yeah, but that's an opinion and it's false. But he really likes to hammer these kind of points, doesn't he? But this is pointless, Michael. This doesn't actually provide you with any leverage because you still haven't provided a scrap of evidence that lipoproteins of any kind or any subfraction of them or cholesterol itself is causally involved in heart disease in any way. You've given us somebody's opinion, a bought and paid for one, and you've shown us a couple of associative studies that don't have any power to inform us on cause and effect. And you've said a lot of things that you've failed to disclaim as your personal opinion.
And last point on LDL oxidization, she points to things like sugar. But newsflash, just life can oxidize your LDL from this study.
No, anything that's an oxidative agent, in fact, Michael, can oxidize things in your body. An oxidative agent is any chemical agent that tends to interact with things like proteins, fats, etc. by tearing electrons out of those things and carrying those electrons away. in order to fill their own valence shells at the expense of those donor proteins and fat molecules, in fact.
Aging oxidizes LDL. I mean, infections can.
No, aging doesn't oxidize anything. It's oxidizing agents that do that.
And as well, we even have like endogenous compounds in our blood that do it. And a great strategy to fight that is eating antioxidants, which she's...
Yeah, another strategy is getting your antioxidant effect from being grounded to the earth, for example. You also get a large release of antioxidant into your bloodstream from eating meat. It's called uric acid. Maybe you should look that one up. And furthermore, your body manufactures a suite of antioxidants itself, which are of a protein nature, which are all involved in the process of keeping you as free of oxidative damage as is possible. Good.
He's decided to not do. And quick reminder on infections from this large BMJ study, people on a low-carb diet had 4 times the risk of moderate to severe COVID infection.
No, this study cannot inform on risk any more than the nutrition study can inform on risk. This was an incidence report, short-term, and it fails to talk about cause and effect in any way, shape or form. Healthy user bias, Michael. We're done. What's next?
Infections, well, loosely plant-based people had 73% lower chance.
No, not chance. That's another analogy of risk, which isn't underpinned by that data set, which is associative.
At one point she says, oh, and people on a carnivore diet, they've gotten things like coronary artery calcium score tests, and they've been fine, so clearly they don't have any heart disease. No one gets heart disease on a
That's an inappropriate interpretation of a CAC score. A CAC score doesn't tell you whether you have heart disease or not. It tells you whether you have advanced atherosclerotic plaque with calcification. It does not pick up on non-calcified atherosclerotic plaques, for which you will need something like an ultrasound methodology to see those. Okay? What it does tell you, if your CAC score is 0, is that you have no advanced atherosclerotic plaquing in your coronary arteries, i.e. you have no calcified plaques.
Carnivore diet.
Many of these lean mass hyperresponders have...
Lean mass hyperresponder is a construct. It's an idea which I believe was first proposed by Dave Feldman, who is also not a scientist. He's an engineer, by the way. It's a way of suggesting that there might be this special group of people who are not at risk from elevated HDL because they are lean and they are magic in some way. They are a hyper responder in terms of their cholesterol in some way, and that means that they're safe while everybody else is still at risk from LDL. It fails to understand that no such distinction is required because nobody is at risk of disease because of a cholesterol reading. Doesn't cause heart disease. Still,
have taken coronary calcium scans or CCTAs, both of which check for plaque in your arteries, and they have
calcified.
Have none. Did you?
This is something that I've seen used so many times in a low-carb diet, especially by people like under 60, whether they're Sean Baker or other people, going, look, my score was 0. I don't have any heart disease or
You added the second bit.
Anything like that. But just looking to a chart like this.
From where, Michael? What's the provenance of this chart? Why should we take this chart seriously?
Coronary artery calcium seems to build up really in older age. You know, in the land where heart disease is our #1 killer, even then people who are in their 40s, over 90% of them have a score of 0. So not an impressive metric. But this
right, so it's something that develops exponentially over decades and not in a straight line. Fantastic. So what?
Where I might as well throw in a couple anecdotes.
Oh, here we go. Anecdotes, my favorite.
That's what people who tend to choose a diet like this really respond to. And first we can go to that.
Whereas people that choose the diet that you purport to be the right one, Michael, respond to emotive discourse, propaganda, misdirect, brainwashing, occultist behavior, fear and division, mass formation psychosis, frankly. Anything but actually responding to actual good, valid, and robust science in any way.
Carnivore kid guy who, he's a fit guy. He was active, relatively young. A lot of people are following the abs. He's got the abs going on. He says, hey, the carnivore diet resulted in my widowmaker artery being 95% blocked.
Well, that's an opinion. To get a 95% blockage of your coronary artery, you would need to have developing seething heart disease for decades prior to that. In most cases. What will happen? The disease will progress most aggressively at the end because it is exponential, as we've just discussed, Michael. His change to a carnivore diet might have been beyond the point at which his disease process had got it away on him completely, and as such it was unable to arrest it. Perhaps he also failed to undertake the other 4 very important anti-inflammatory hacks. To get what those are, you'll need to watch my channel. You'll find the video with me on the thumbnail going like that, telling you there are 5. That's 5, isn't it? 1, 2, 3. Yes, good. 5. Go and watch that video and you'll learn the other 4, because carnivore diet doesn't actually necessarily solve the problem by itself. It's the most part of the challenge, but there's more to it.
So obviously he went off the diet, and you can just see his frustration thinking that he did everything right in that post. But
well, he did in the last bit where he was carnivore. Unfortunately, for the several decades before that, he didn't, and that was where the problem evolved.
clearly he was, again, brainwashed.
Clearly he was brainwashed, Michael, says Michael, who is clearly a member, a high priest, in fact, of the Church of Anorexia Vegana. Have I mentioned how well you're looking, Michael, by the way?
His LDL not fluffy enough? We'll never know. Anyway, moving on to another case that is posted on this Alzheimer's forum. And even though it's just an anecdote, it has some compelling figures.
Compelling means gives you no other option, like you are compelled to pay your taxes or else come to prison. What am I compelled to do by the numbers that you're about to present, Michael?
We're talking about somebody who's in their 50s. They said they never smoked and they're physically active, and they were on the keto diet since 2015, and then in 2019 decided to go on the carnivore diet. And then in 2021, they had their first heart attack that was on the carnivore diet. And now,
right, so same pattern. The disease follows the abuse by several years and is an exponential development. The disease progresses most aggressively at the end. All of this just supports what I'm saying.
The really interesting part about this is the right coronary artery at that time was just 10% blocked, but then another year of carnivore.
Does Michael understand how exponentials work on a graph? Time versus atherosclerosis development? Does he understand this? It seems like not. Or maybe his theology demands that he doesn't understand that. Don't know. Comment below the video. Let me know which you think it is. Does Michael just not understand this at all, or is his theology requiring him to mislead people knowingly? That'll be an interesting poll.
Diet, they have a second heart attack, and this time that same right coronary artery is 99% blocked. Sadly, he didn't have a low-carb doctor, and they just didn't understand, so they made no bones about it. Quote, my high cholesterol was the cause, and with the evidence
there's no evidence that is so. That is an opinion, still.
I have, how can I argue? He said,
well, you can argue in the way I have argued today, for example. That's why I'm making these videos, by the way. You're welcome, so that you're able to have these arguments too.
So to summarize, I had the gold standard test and no blockages were found. 1.5 years later on strict carnivore, full-blown heart attack.
Great, so lovely story. A nice anecdote there, Michael. I think next time you want to tell us a story, though, perhaps more emphasis on the dragons and a decent ending, I think, would make a huge difference.
It's almost like animal fat clogs your arteries.
Again, an opinion, not underpinned by science. I'd like to see you clog anything with a fat at 37 degrees C, though, Michael. That'd be great.
Anyway, I just wanted to quickly mention a couple things about HDL, because there's this idea that her HDL is high and that's good, and low-carb doctors, they just want to see your HDL be high.
Yeah, that's not going to help. Your lipoproteins are what they need to be at that time. They're under the control of your genes. Your genes know what they're doing. Those genes have survived 4,500 million years of evolution, at least. That's a good system. It works well. It doesn't need justifying or explaining to people who don't. It just does its thing automatically.
Well, from multiple lines of evidence.
If you're going to say multiple lines of evidence, Michael, you provide them so that we can litigate those so-called evidences. Are you going to do that?
HDL is not going to save anybody here. First of all, HDL-raising drugs do not help with heart disease, and also from the NIH, summing up a study, quote, scientists discovered a genetic mutation that raises HDL cholesterol levels, but rather than protecting against heart disease, increases the risk.
No, and there are no studies that can inform on risk. False statement. Throw that one in the bin. Start again. Rewrite the conclusion. Data does not inform the conclusion of this paper.
For it, that might be because HDL in high levels can oxidize as well.
Sure.
And to corroborate from this 2022 study from the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, quote, low HDL was associated with increased coronary heart disease risk.
No, not risk, still.
In white but not black adults with high HDL-C, not protective in either group.
Fine. No problem.
Anyway, really quickly, let's move on to some other markers. She looks at insulin resistance, and this one, I'm not going to go deep into here, but is a bit sketchy.
Insulin resistance is a construct, Michael.
People have pointed out, quote, that LPIR, the metric she got, is an index that has not been FDA approved, and
So what?
further studies are needed to confirm its validity. And yeah, the guy who wrote that, which was in 2023, calls himself the keto doc, so hopefully you should listen to him. It's using lipid metrics to estimate insulin resistance.
Why would you do that? That makes no sense. Mechanistically, theoretically, or of any utility of any kind.
Which, I don't think is ideal, and I have to remind you from studies like this that high saturated fat intake, which she's of course getting from animals, can cause insulin resistance.
No. False interpretation. I've covered that in great depth on my channel as well. Have a look at my various videos concerning the Randall cycle and you'll understand it after that, Michael, probably.
Through, direct damage. So while she might not be consuming any carbs now, most people will consume carbs again. They will quit, and then they're going to have a
So now you have a crystal ball and you know what people will do you, Michael?
horrible response to carbohydrates and end up worse off. That's my speculation, at least.
Ah, good. So you've at least disclaimed that bit of speculation. Well, it's nonsensical, Michael.
Anyway, moving on to C-reactive protein, which is an inflammation marker. Hers, she says, is great. It's optimal at 0.70, but
According to whom?
I have to question if this really is optimal, especially for her age. Looking to a study like this, the female average under 40, which she is 0.34, really half of what she's at.
What's the standard deviation around that, though, Michael? Because without a gauge of that, we have no idea of the veracity of this mean value as a predictor of anything.
And it's similar in the 40 age range, 0.38. So you can see by this chart that she has, a CRP of someone over 60 from this study at least. And we can even find studies like this one where smokers had an average lower CRP than she does.
So what?
And my CRP was below detectable, but that wasn't a high sensitivity test, so not...
Congratulations, Michael, but so what?
Not really fair comparison. But as she says, she doesn't have a chronic disease, but high LDL over...
See, this is a chart which is titled LDL is causal in atherosclerosis, and yet there's nothing on this chart that establishes that as so. This is an associative data set, which cannot inform in any way on causality at all. So this is just false advertising, propaganda, smoke and mirrors. Remember, this actually comes from the paper that was put together by those folks that weren't paid any money at all by drug companies. Remember those folks?
Over time can sure give you one. To contrast
No.
this, I did a 2019 video on that carnivore to vegan diet swap, which showed that the person who was originally on the carnivore diet started at a CRP of 5.
So two people changed the diet, one in one direction, one in the other direction, so n equals 2 in total, so of no value to us whatsoever. This just gets a big fat so what, Michael? Nothing here of any value scientifically, nothing here that adds veracity to your argument, and still no proof provided by you that LDL or lipoproteins of any kind or any subfraction of those or cholesterol are causally involved in heart disease. Still none.
Next, she says she looked at nutrients, but this was really a limited look. And I am glad that she looked at folic acid because Michaela Peterson, who eats a carnivore diet, was deficient in this. She is long-term on that diet, and this is only 6 months, so who knows where that would go. But remember how James Blunt got scurvy on his...
No, he reported that he spoke to someone in the NHS at one point about some bleeding gums when he was a student, and for a lark, for a while, he ate nothing but apparently chicken, which is nutritionally deficient for people, as a sole source of nutrition, and also ate a lot of mayonnaise, but not much of anything else. The NHS person concerned suggested to him that he might have scurvy, but I have never seen James Blunt ever support these claims with any, here is the medical report, here is the tests that were done to establish my status as suffering scurvy. Okay, this is just yet more propaganda, spin doctory, nonsensical rubbish, Michael. This is not evidence from clinical studies that prove your point. And the reason that you're showing us this James Blunt sensationalist piece here is precisely for the reason that you don't have any evidence to support your claim.
His carnivore diet, which is, relegated to a sailor disease of ancient times. Nope, that's a result of not enough vitamin C, so maybe these carnivores should start getting vitamin C tests.
Yes, Maybe they should. And what we'll find is that at large, of the hundreds of thousands and millions actually now of people who are undertaking a wholly or almost entirely wholly carnivorous diet, scurvy hasn't suddenly exploded around the world. People are not getting scurvy on a carnivore diet, Michael. So this is a theoretical problem that you're putting forward here. It doesn't pan out. Shall we move on?
Ridiculous. But most nutrients were simply just not tested, so we don't know. Anyway, one test that was obviously not done was her environmental footprint, and from that recent Oxford study.
More theology.
Now, my quick estimate using their numbers was that a carnivore diet has 25 times the emissions and the species extinction.
Nonsense. I could show you workings from peer-reviewed studies that would indicate exactly the inverse.
As a vegan does. So that's worth mentioning. Don't even get me started on the extra animal deaths directly. And to emphasize the good...
Yes, the extra animal deaths associated causally and directly with the production of so-called food like slop for vegans.
The dietary choices that she's been led to take. Well, now she's just starting the BBBE challenge, which is a diet that just...
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame, really, that a lot of these online influencers talking about diet and nutrition will change their approach every 3 weeks for some more views to make another video about something. Oh, I'm doing this challenge now, without actually really any good reason necessarily for doing it. And I think BBBE is one of those. It's just another form of being carnivorous, which is a good thing.
Consists of beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. Yes, 1/4 of her diet is made of class 1A carcinogen.
False. Class 1A carcinogen. No.
Processed meat. That alone should make you question the health claims that she's making in this video. Anyway.
And what we should do is seriously question your credibility, and we already have actually shown it to be exactly where it is, Michael, and that is in the toilet. Because what you've just given us is a position statement. Carcinogen. That is an opinion. There are no experiments underpinning that claim. Remember where opinions go again, Michael? Remember those opinions? Yep.
In the end, I do believe she's trying to be healthier, but she's just, tapped into the wrong experts, and it really is a result.
According to who, Michael? What qualifies you to decide who are the right experts and who are the wrong experts? In fact, even who is or is not an expert. You yourself are not an expert in this field. Ergo, you cannot decide who is an expert.
She says her husband wanted to go on this diet, so she was following that. She then came up with post hoc justifications for her health results for her.
Completely unlike what vegans do, Michael. Coming up with post hoc justifications for their ridiculous, false theological belief structure in veganism. Okay.
Blood results.
Now, my husband had been badgering me to try the carnivore diet. He really wanted to try it, but he wanted me to do it with him.
But again, her LDL cholesterol is just absurdly high.
Again, absurdly and high, both value judgment statements, unscientific, and it's an opinion, Michael, which is not underpinned by science, and as such is of no value whatsoever.
LDL again being causal to atherosclerosis.
No, it isn't, Michael. Still, you're giving us the opinion of someone that's bought and paid for, because you didn't provide us with any evidence. Remember? You can look back through this video again for yourself, Michael. Go through it second by second. At no point did you provide us with experimental work undertaken under observation and control in an appropriate population which can inform us on cause and effect. It does not exist, and it never will.
Sclerosis, and those larger particles, which aren't even that much larger and don't even oxidize that much less, are clearly not going to prevent the negative effects of her high levels, which she even admits.
Negative effects. Effect is the conjugate of cause, Michael. Remember, we don't have cause and effect data. Still.
Admitted her LDL particles are high, but she wasn't
high according to what?
Concerned because other low-carb dieters have that too. No, that's not a metric. Again, we have that higher mortality on low-carb diets.
No, we don't, Michael, to any meaningful degree at all.
Which, from that study that scared Mercola, was specific to high animal fat, high saturated fat, low-carb diets.
Well, the fact that Mercola was scared by a poor quality study that cannot support the inference is Mercola's problem, Michael. Nobody else's, and it doesn't change any of the facts surrounding this argument, which you lose because you failed utterly to support your claim of cause and effect. Again.
And as we've seen from many studies, more plant-based low-carb diets even associated with lower mortality. So
associated, who cares?
it's this animal
Healthy user bias, Michael. We're done.
fat in these animal products that she's eating that drives that.
No,
Anyway,
that's an opinion. And it's false. It's ridiculous.
I hope she sees the light that this is not a healthy diet, yet there are other
The light, says Michael, about healthy diets. All right, son, if you say so.
diets focused around unprocessed foods, like plant foods.
No, plant foods is an oxymoron in human beings, Michael.
That can get her the results that she wants without having these insane,
Insane is a value judgment statement.
blood marker risks.
No, there is nothing that can inform on risk anywhere in the literature still, Michael. Yeah, what you missed, Michael, was any science whatsoever. What you missed was providing us with any evidence to support the claim that you have made. What you failed to do is disclaim most of your rancid, ridiculous opinions as such, and you have posed as a scientist or a competent commentator upon science, and you've been found wanting, badly wanting. So there we go, nothing of any value there from Michael whatsoever, some ridiculous claims, completely unsupported by anything except theology, propaganda, smoke and mirrors, and a desperate want for what he's saying to be true, despite the fact that it isn't. There you go, that's how you have that argument. Hope it was of value to you, I hope it was an hour well spent. See you next time when I don't know what will be happening. All sorts of things are happening on the interwebs these days, aren't there? Ciao for now.